Sam Amick, the senior NBA writer, said sources the Lakers head coach Frank Vogel's job in serious jeopardy despite the Jazz win. They have a game tonight, which would lead me to believe is Frank Vogel's job still in jeopardy as they host the Pacers. Sam, good morning.
Good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me, sir.
So is his job in jeopardy?
It is, for sure. To me, the human element, Dan, is like always coming into play here. The emotions got really, really high after the Denver loss, which shouldn't shock anybody. Trailing by 45 at one point, losing by 37. Yes, you don't have Anthony Davis, but the Nuggets don't have Jamal Murray. They don't have Michael Porter Jr. So that was as close as Frank had come to losing his job. And, I saw your segment earlier and your 2 cents on why they wouldn't just fire him now. And you kind of got me to make sure I had the answer to that question ready for you. The truth is, I don't think they have the faith in the rest of the coaching staff. David Fizdale is a former head coach and the kind of guy who certainly has the chops to do it. But there is a sense that in the collective, in terms of the staff, they don't necessarily think that it would put them in a better spot. And to Frank's credit, I know it's just one game, but that Utah game was big because the mood was such that if those players wanted to say goodbye to him, then all they had to do was roll over. And they obviously didn't do that.
Yeah, but if they lose tonight at home to the Pacers, or, they
Right.
go on this road trip and they.
No, I hear you for sure. It is going to continue to be tenuous, but the Jazz game specifically, is like you have LeBron choosing in Denver to not address the media, which is very un-LeBron-like. And then he later explained that he didn't want to say things that he would regret, which kind of tells you how everybody was feeling, from the front office to the players to the owner. Everybody's upset. And then LeBron apologizes on Twitter, which is not the kind of thing he typically does. Obviously, you have Magic out there tweeting. So all those things thrown together made the Jazz win huge. But yeah, it's going to continue to be challenging. And we'll see where it goes.
Okay, if they had lost to Utah on Monday night, was he going to get fired?
I think it was a very, very strong possibility, depending on, it sounds funny, but the optics. Yes, wins and losses matter. If you lose by 2 and you play well and still send the message. I mean, all throughout that game, it's funny, a lot of the Lakers media corps and my colleague Bill Oram, who I obviously authored this story with, and others, were tweeting about how the scary part for the Lakers in that game is that they were playing really well, but then they would fall behind. And you would start in real time asking that question of, how do you separate playing well versus winning? And so I don't know for sure what would have happened after the Utah game, but it was extremely touch and go. And if they had been blown out, then I think Frank probably would have been out. But again, you have all these layers to it, right? You've got the fact that when Frank was in trouble before, and I'm talking earlier in the season, like we reported, Kurt Rambis, who's an advisor with the Lakers, had made it clear to that coaching staff that they were in a bad spot. Then Frank gets COVID. Then he's out for 5 games. To me, one of the interesting what if scenarios is, David Fizdale ends up going 1-4 during that stretch. And so it's a small sample size, but as ownership in the front office looks at it and asks the question of, if not this guy, then what are we doing? That didn't paint a picture that it would be rosier on the other side. And I think that kind of stuff is coming into play too.
What is Frank Vogel not doing that is going to cost him his job? He didn't build the team.
Right. No, I'm with you. I mean, this is the tricky part. This. You've been doing it so long. The tricky part of being the messenger on these types of stories is we're certainly not endorsing the logic behind firing Frank. You know what I'm saying? We're relaying what's happening internally. But opinion-wise, I would 100% fall into your side. Frank is a high-level coach, a guy who, after winning a championship, I don't think deserved to have to wait as long as he did for an extension. That was curious, and I think, missing the mark on the Lakers' part. Then when he got the extension, as we reported at the time, they only gave him an additional year. So he's running through 2022, 2023. That was another sign that the ground beneath him wasn't all that stable. So we kind of knew this going in. And it then comes down to the old pro sports adage of how you can't fire the players. I just covered this in my backyard in Sacramento. Luke Walton gets fired. Certainly he had made mistakes. The Kings aren't any better for it. They promoted Alvin Gentry. But it's when the pressure reaches a point at these different organizations that you feel like just something has to be done. It's either the coaching change, or it's a big trade, or a GM loses his job. In this case, that's not what's going to happen right now. And trade deadline coming up quick. So maybe they can find a way to improve around the edges and relieve pressure elsewhere.
Sam Amick, the senior NBA writer for The Athletic. If I gave the Lakers a do-over with Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, I don't think they would do it. And I think in all my years of covering the league, one of the more unique, if not, kind of a case all its own situations regarding the communication between the star players, the front office, and the machinations behind how this trade came to be are not conventional, meaning that, as you know, and a lot of people know by now, Russell Westbrook had this strong desire to come play for the Lakers, to come home, had made that clear, had gone to LeBron James's house and met with LeBron and Anthony Davis and talked about this vision. The front office ends up greenlighting it. They end up doing it. But, in doing so, they had a Buddy Hield trade with Sacramento that was on the brink of being done that ended up getting derailed. So whether it's, turning back time and doing the Buddy Hield trade to give you more shooting and just, let LeBron and AD try to repeat what they did in 2020, I think they would do it over again because I think Russ is an all-time great. He's an incredible player in the right environment.
Oh, so you think that they would do this deal again with Russ?
No, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I don't think they would do it.
Okay.
I think they would. No, I don't think they would do it.
Okay.
I think what they're learning the hard way is, and I'm parroting the scouts that I've talked to about this, is that Russ, the ceiling on how much Russ helps you is fairly low because you have LeBron James on your team. That, he's not helping you off the ball. And if LeBron got hurt, Russ, knock on wood, he doesn't. Russ could be a savior for the Lakers. He could be the kind of guy that keeps them afloat, and wins them games, because then Russ could be Russ. That's what puzzled me so much about his desire to make this move in the first place. Dan, when he went from Houston to Washington, the whole desire then was, I'm tired of sacrificing with James Harden, and I want to go be Russ again. And Scotty Brooks, his old buddy from Oklahoma City, was sitting there in the nation's capital saying, let's do it. Let's go. And they did it. And guess what? For 6 months at the tail end of last season, the optics around Russ were great again because he was fantastic. In that environment, he was a very good player. In this one, he just doesn't help them that much.
I can't help but wonder about the supporting cast that they have now and the supporting cast that they had when LeBron got there with Ingram and Lonzo Ball. I mean, I go back to Julius Randle. You can throw in Kuzma in there. If you said to LeBron, hey, you can have a do-over here. We're full of do-overs here. Would he want to have those young kids there with him now? I know they rolled the dice. They got Anthony Davis. They won a championship. But long-term, who's going to help you win more championships, Anthony Davis or that supporting cast that you got rid of?
I mean, on that one, I'm going to say LeBron does exactly what they did. Now, would he love to have held on to one or two more of those players?
Yeah.
For sure. But a chip is a chip. You know what I mean? And for him, to get that fourth one, to do it in a third market with a third team, gave him, another layer to his legacy that nobody can ever take away. And you do get the sense LeBron is challenging for me to even cover because the guy works his tail off. You can't question the work ethic, the way he, prepares his body and competes. And so he's still trying to play like LeBron, but you do have a feeling like he's going to give it his best go. But because he got a championship with the Lakers, that this is a successful chapter in his career. And sure, he would love to put another cherry on top. So I don't think he would trade that deal. But for, you see Lonzo balling out in Chicago, Brandon's become a very good player in New Orleans, and Kuzma doing his thing in DC. I mean, those guys would help. And within all that, you're talking about losing Alex Caruso, prioritizing Talen Horton-Tucker, who's not having a very good year, signing Kendrick Nunn. And this is just unfortunate, but, he hasn't even hit the floor yet because of injuries. So the role players, as much as we talk about Russ, I mean, the role players might even be a more relevant discussion with the Lakers.
Is there a trade market for Ben Simmons?
Yes, 100%. I'm somewhat surprised by I wrote last week about some of the concerns coming from interested teams regarding, not only Ben's kind of the uncertainty around where his head is at, where his game would be at, But even through all that, there's a ton of interest. And, it's just a matter of reading Daryl Morey's mind in Philly and trying to find out, does he actually want to get a deal done before the deadline, or is he stalling to get to this summer? One of the growing subplots, if you will, is, his desire to reunite with James Harden again and do a sign and trade with Brooklyn potentially. Where does Joel Embiid fit into all this? And so, you got to be kind of a psychologist to figure this thing out right now. But there's a market. Arsham Sharania at The Athletic had pegged Sacramento, Portland, Atlanta, Indiana, Minnesota as the 5 leaders in that clubhouse. Could be somebody else, but there's I think a pretty robust market.
Do you think it gets done?
Right now, I'm saying yes, because now I'm a little bit hesitation is that I'm guilty of listening to a lot of the teams that want him. This is not the Sixers quietly telling me, yeah, we got to get something done. Like, I haven't heard that. And the Ben Simmons people don't have total clarity either. They're quick to tell you, all right, if they don't do a deal, like, don't think Ben's coming back. I don't think, my prediction would be he's not going to play for them this season if he doesn't get traded. So that's where you got to reconcile with the big fella. Joel Embiid made headlines the other day when he talked about the fact that he didn't think they had urgency to make change right now. So basically supported the front office and their stance and kind of created the appearance of patience on their side. And that's where this stuff kind of gets fun, because the next few weeks we're going to filter through all that and figure out what was fact and what was fiction.
Congrats on the story there, Sam. Thanks for joining us. As always, we appreciate it.
You got it, Dan. Thanks, man.
Sam Amick, the senior NBA writer for The Athletic.